All right, so I'm going to talk about iodine, and there is actually an iodine crisis going on in America, all around the world, but mostly in America. We'll look at some statistics of iodine in populations around the world. But there's a doctor, Dr. David Brownstein. He was one of the original doctors who started work with Dr. Abram like 20 years ago. So this stuff is 20 years old, what they've discovered, what iodine does, how it works on the body, and how important it is. Because it's one of those things that is just overlooked. And there's some iodine deficiencies that are causing a lot of diseases that people don't realize. The source this may have come from iodine. So we're going to look at iodine because iodine, first of all, it's a trace mineral. We always hear about they have iodine and salt, so we're getting our iodine. But it's a trace mineral and it's used all throughout the body. The most important thing that people think about with iodine is the thyroid. But a lot of it's stored there, and so the body can't make it, so you have to eat it. And so it's one of the things that's not, if you're having a regular average American diet, you're not getting it. And that's why the levels are so high. And it's used by your thyroid to make your hormones. It's used to make energy. It's used for your immune system to digest your food. And it puts you at risk for certain diseases, especially anything to do with the lymph system, your thyroid, like your prostate and the breasts, all have to do with a thyroid deficiency.
Well, I know as a kid, every time we got a cut or something, that's what they put on us, is the red iodine.
Yeah, the red iodine.
So we didn't have no deficiency back then because we got plenty of it.
You got plenty of iodine.
You got an intravenous.
And when you go to the doctor, if you have surgery, a lot of times they still use it today. They get that big old spongy thing and put iodine all over because iodine, it's antifungal, antibacterial, and you can't overdose on it. Because
it absorbs through your skin.
It absorbs through your skin. Yeah, you can absorb it through your skin, and your body will take what it needs, what it can absorb at that time, and it'll flush the rest out when you go to the bathroom. And so, but we have a decline in iodine, and right now in America we have about a 97 and 98% deficiency. No one goes to the doctor and gets tested for iodine. The average doctor is like, I don't even know how to run it. Where do I do it? And so, but they test enough people like this is real, and it's overlooked. It's overlooked with a lot of the thyroid diseases especially. And so we're going to look at the iodine. What's it do in the body? Well, in the thyroid, it helps us make our T4. It's a hormone that we need to make T3, and it's very important. It's because it regulates so many other hormones in our body, our metabolic rate. So people who are cold all the time, they have a lower body temperature, they always have cold hands and cold feet. I mean, that could be other things like type 2 diabetes, but they tend to be always cold. They just can't ever get hot. It could be related to their thyroid. They don't have enough iodine, they don't have the T3. And actually next month, I'm going to go into how to read your thyroid panel from a conventional medicine point of view and with a research new functional medicine point of view. And that way people can decide which way they want to go. And so I'll send out probably next time, like, get these 5 things tested, because they only test usually for 2, maybe 3 things. And that doesn't tell you if you have a deficiency or not, and how it's affecting your body. So some people are sick, but they don't find out until it's almost too late with their thyroid. But that's what we'll go over next month. But the role of iodine, we always think about our thyroid needing it, but the breasts need it. If the breasts don't get it, they start to get fibroids and nodules. What do we do for the breast? You gotta go every year for those exams, and that has a lot to do with it. They don't even make the connection. There's no connection as why are they having it in the first place. And if it goes unchecked, eventually it can turn to cancer. Same thing with prostate or the lymph system. Could actually even affect your tonsils and things like that. Stomach's a real important one. I guess it was about a year ago I did one on stomach acid, that if you don't have enough stomach acid, you can't digest your food properly and break it down. And so it can go throughout the whole digestive system and not get broken down. It's not feeding the right bacteria because it hasn't been broken down. And so we had things like you could take apple cider vinegar or things like that. But why are so many people having low stomach acid? And then they're having the heartburn, because if you don't have enough acid, that little valve on the top of the stomach can't close. And so you're going to have the reflux, or you could actually have acid vapors coming up and burning the back of your throat and causing problems too. It's not just the acid, it could be the vapors from the stomach. And so why do so many people have low stomach acid? So the brain needs it as well, especially growing children and pregnant mothers, which even the government knows pregnant mothers need a little more iodine. So that's not a secret or anything. It's out there. So we need it for all of these reasons that we just mentioned. So what are the symptoms of low iodine? The symptoms are, again, you could have cold hands, you could have fatigue. A lot of these people have fatigue. They'll have sore breasts. One is hair loss or hair thinning is one of them. And if you have, eventually you could get, like, they lose the eyebrows on the sides right here. That's another sign of low iodine. And or hypothyroidism, which is from, a lot of cases, low iodine. Not all the cases, but a lot of cases have to do with low iodine. So these are related. I'm just going over iodine first. Again, large thyroid, miscarriages, infertility. Dry skin is a big one. Dry skin, if you have dry skin, you could have low iodine. If you have the calluses on the heels, low iodine. Those are all some constipation, because again, you have that lack of acid to break down the food. If you have more acid, and that's the thing, you can actually, if you take like too much apple cider vinegar, you can give yourself more acid than you need, inadvertently, and actually will make constipation go like way too fast, if you get my drift. And so again, these are all symptoms of low iodine. And low iodine affects the thyroid. This is the one that's really the most concern, probably for a lot of people who don't even realize it, that this is what's going on. And so what happens is, and Dr. Brownstein, it took him 10 years, but he figured out the pathology. How is iodine used in the thyroid? And so they figured it out. So if they don't have iodine, what happens is, in that whole pathway, which you can, like, I'll have a little scan QR code. If you go and watch his videos, he explains in detail the pathway, and it's been 20 years old. It's not being debunked, and so this is what happens: is it actually, because it doesn't have iodine, there is an extra little negative electron that is made, like every time the little process happens, and that's a radical. It's an ROS. It's a free radical oxidative species, and that causes damage, and eventually it causes damage to the thyroid, and eventually you actually, because of that, your body is made to clean it up, to fix what's wrong, to clean up that tissue, and so your body will actually start attacking your thyroid, and you could get Graves', so you get your antibodies tested. Usually they test you for like Graves' and Hashimoto's to see, are you to the point now, or someone to the point now, that their body is attacking their thyroid. Then they have an autoimmune disease. So it's not like they think, the immune disease, this Hashimoto's, the immune system gone wacko. No, it's not. It's doing what the body's made to do. If you've got damage in free radicals, the body's meant to clean it up, and so it's cleaning it up. And we'll learn next month that you actually can get rid of Hashimoto's to like 0 antibodies. Not everybody, but it is possible to get rid of that. And so that's just a little bit about that. Diseases associated with, we talked about some of the things that your symptoms, but what are the diseases that are causes of those symptoms or from that? And one is hypothyroidism. So your thyroid just can't put out T4, okay? And it's a key hormone for your body to run your metabolic system, a lot of other things. So your whole body's running slower. You could have goiter, which is like a swelling or enlargement of your thyroid, developmental delays, creatinism, some breast disorders that we talked about already, and other thyroid disorders like Graves' disease or Hashimoto's, where your body will actually attack your thyroid. And that's because it doesn't have enough iodine for it to run. Okay, we talked about same thing, low stomach acid. People don't realize that it's not just the thyroid that needs iodine. Stomach needs a lot of iodine. Breasts need a lot of iodine. Prostates need a lot of iodine. So does the stomach. And without enough, the body just can't make the acid. Can't digest your food. And then you have all that downstream collateral damage. So why are we deficient? Okay, so why are we deficient? So let's look at first where do these deficiencies come from? First of all, they put it in our salt. But as you're going to see on the next slide, that the iodine, it's put in there, but it's in a form of iodine that it sublimates, and so it goes directly from a solid to a vapor. It doesn't go through a liquid phase. And so depending on how old your salt is, you may not have any iodized salt. What I use, like sea salt, Celtic sea salt, pink Himalayan sea salt, doesn't have hardly any iodine in it at all.
Well, I just had one of the moments like Eddie did a while ago with X and this equals Y. Iodine salt, I'm just now seeing that. I read it all the time, it never clicked to just now. You talking about the iodine being in the salt.
In the salt, yeah, because you have iodized salt. And actually, the government, there was, about like 7 years ago, they were trying to get like airborne, all that kind of, they were trying to get natural things off the market. And one of the things they were trying to get is the iodine out of salt. They didn't want that available because it competes with pharmaceutical drugs for those same receptor sites. So interesting information. Every single cell in your body, nerve cell, muscle cell, whatever, fat cell, every single cell has an iodine receptor on it. So every cell in the body uses it. It's not just the thyroid.
One of the issues too with the iodine, with that receptor is anything in that halogen group, that haloid group or whatever
Yeah.
it's called, that competes with iodine. You know, chlorine, bromide, chlorine, all of those things compete with it. And so if you've been poisoned with those, it will basically lock that, or can lock down that receptor and cause an issue.
Yep. And so, but right here, this is why there's no iodine in our food sources today, because basically there's even if you had fresh iodized salt, there's not enough, and we'll talk about why later. A little bit in the sea salt. Of course, there's nothing in processed food. They're not going to put iodine in it. There's only a low amount in seafood. Some have higher than others. And
Well, we don't eat as much seafood now
yeah,
as-
consumption. Now, we used to have a lot of iodine in our dairy because they used to feed the dairy cows iodine because they were aware of it, before the 1970s when they took it out. They used to put a lot of, not only that, but they used to clean the tits of the cow with iodine. Now they use a chlorine solution, which actually fights against iodine. So they do still have iodine in the feed, but it's way lower amounts than what they used to. And so people are like, it's in the milk. Not really, because they dropped it just so they could say, but they can still say it is in the milk. And also our modern day crops, because of all the pesticides, think about like glyphosate, it chelates it and locks it up in the soil. So even what's in the soil can't get to the food. And you hear about like iodine, we need to supplement with iodine for our cows because they're not getting it. And it turns out there's a very few regions that don't have enough iodine, and that's one of those things I go back to my worldview. Does it make sense with God's worldview? I'm like, how could God give us health and life if he didn't provide what we needed? And so I'm like, is there really no iodine? And so it turns out it's a special region in like the upper mountain, the Blue Ridge, Appalachians, thank you. The Appalachian Mountains where there's little iodine in there, but almost every place else, there is very little amounts of iodine. It's a trace mineral. And if your cows eat grass, guess what? And if you're eating, dairy from a cow and they're eating grass, you're getting a little bit of it all the time. But if you're eating, a CAFO milk where they're feeding it corn, it's not, your milk doesn't have iodine. You're not getting it, so you're probably low. processed foods. And so it's just a little bit of education on how just to put foods back in our diets and to avoid some of these toxins. What Eddie was talking about just right then was if you look over at iodine, it's in the halogen column. Fluorine, fluorine, which like fluoride. Okay, so you have fluoride, chlorine, bromine, and iodine. And so all of those compete because they have the same electron cloud. They compete with iodine. So if you're drinking chlorinated water too much, or because a lot of they have chlorinated water in some water sources, you know, you turn on the faucet, you get your glass of water, you go, whew, I can smell the chlorine. Well, that's another thing. If you're trying to get just a little bit of iodine and you're drinking chlorinated water all the time, you're not going to be getting all that iodine because it's going to have to compete with chlorine. If you have bread, okay, some breads, they used to condition bread with iodine. That was another source of iodine. So people before the 1970s weren't low on this, but now they took the iodine out. They use bromine, and so bromine is actually a toxin. When I worked at Borden Chemical and Plastics, our bromine was locked up in a cabinet. It wasn't out on the shelves with all the other chemicals. It was locked up. It was toxic. You weren't supposed to mess around with it, you know, just a little extra caution with it. And I'm like, that's in our bread. Not all bread, so you have to read. If it's brominated flour, it's got the bromine in it. Again, a lot of people are aware of the fluoride now. They're trying to get the fluoride out of the water, especially now that we have the MAHA movement. They're trying to get the fluoride out of the water. Use fluoride-free toothpaste. Again, all these things are competing with iodine, and they're in our everyday lives here. So let's look at it's an American problem, but it's also in some cases a world problem. And it's interesting to compare everything I said. Does it pan out? Do populations with higher amounts of iodine, do they have less of these diseases like Graves, Hashimoto's, goiter? And do the places with really low amounts have higher rates? And it turns out it's so. So Japan, this is our recommended daily allowance, 150 micrograms per day. And when they made this rule, a lot of doctors said, no, that's too low, but the government passed it anyway. And so they dropped it down to that much. Look what Japanese get, 2,000 to 3,000 micrograms. We get 150. Okay, and so they have the highest because they have the seafood, the kelp and the higher seafood consumption. In the United States, we have between 110 to 150 micrograms that we get, okay, because of everything we talked about earlier. And then in Europe, they get a little bit more than us, so they should be a little bit healthier than us in all those categories that we talked about. And then over in the Middle East in some areas, they're really low on iodine. So their rates of goiter should be through the roof. Their rates of Hashimoto's and other iodine-related diseases should be a lot higher. And sure enough, when we look at it, it pans out. So when we look at Japan, they have very low rates of hypothyroidism, so low hypothyroid, the thyroid's working really slow, not hyper like a kid's hyper. And so they have low rates of that. They have low rates of breast cancer, and they have low rates of, matter of fact, goiter's rare. You know, probably would go over there, what's goiter? I don't know. You know, it's like, but over here we know what it is. And then when you go to the United States, we have a very low amount, low to moderate, and our hypothyroidism is higher. Our autoimmune thyroid diseases, Hashimoto's, Graves, it's high. Overall thyroid disease, higher. And same thing, breast cancer is high, extremely high, and goiter and everything else. And then you go to Europe, they're a little bit better off with us just by having a little bit more iodine than America does, not much, you know, like 50 micrograms more. And then we have areas that are really deficient. And we see that, again, hypothyroid, goiter, other diseases are high. Some of the things that can't measure, but things like goiter are common because they don't have the iodine. And
Well, they don't have the food supplies as well.
yeah, They have a lot of issues with food over there. And so when we look at our government did want to make sure we got iodine, so they had to set the limit. What do we set the limit at for iodine? Well, they go, oh, the thyroid. We know this disease called goiter because people in the Appalachian Mountains have it because they don't have enough iodine. So we should have, what they decided was to put enough iodine into our food system, just enough to stop goiter. So what's the least we can give, because they didn't want to overdose everybody. What's the least you can give? And so it's 150. Well, what about the stomach? What about the lymphatic system? What about everything else that needs iodine? Every other cell in your body. And so they didn't consider that. And so that's why they set it so very low. Okay, so we know that they did put iodine in salt, and sure enough, when they did that, goiter did go down. And so it did help a little bit. It's better than nothing to have some in there. But we know that it does sublimate out iodine. It releases that iodine.
So when you're cooking with it, the stuff that you need is evaporating, right? It's just,
No, not really.
Yeah.
It's not, heat does do it to a certain extent, but not in, like when you're cooking in it.
Right.
Takes a little bit of time for it to do it. And it literally, really and truly, you don't need a whole lot of heat. Just sitting there, it eventually will
Right.
turn into a vapor and leave. It takes a while. But like, so if you try to store ionized salt for 10 years, unless it's sealed, the chances of you having iodine in that salt are kind of minuscule. And then within a couple of months, if you have it, like you buy your Morton salt, and you have it sitting in your counter, by the time you finish that thing, there's probably not any iodine left in it.
Right. So, you see around here, with the humidity being so high, sometimes your restaurants will put salt, rice in there
Yeah,
to keep it from clogging up,
Mm-hmm.
right.
So,
And when the rice just acts as a desiccant, it just
Right.
absorbs the salt, the thing. And it will do that, just even then it still will clog up on the top of the shaker and
Oh,
stuff,
yeah.
but it'll have, but I don't think that would affect the iodine in it. It's really more of a time type thing. It just over time it effervesces out. So, and I imagine in heat it would do longer,
oh, yeah.
but I don't think cooking would be enough it wouldn't have enough time to do anything, so.
Yeah, the heat and moisture are supposed to be two of the factors that speed up that sublimation of the iodine.
So
All
we
right.
need to eat more salt than iodine.
Yeah, if you can get it, that's the
Right.
problem. Actually, you just need to eat more things like grass-fed beef and,
Grass-fed dairy, grass-fed
Yeah.
cheese, grass-fed, yeah.
yeah, seafood,
Why eat my share of seafood?
One thing that has a lot of iodine is shrimp.
Right,
you know,
exactly.
So
That's the reason why a lot of people can't eat it, because it has
yeah, it
a lot
does have it. And shrimp is also high in cholesterol, but,
Right.
it's actually the better cholesterol, so.
Right.
All right, so, and a lot of people, because of, there's a mantra out there that iodine is dangerous. And so we're going to go through and bust some of those myths. Y'all may never have heard that iodine is dangerous, but I'm going to go ahead and cover those issues anyway.
Doctors like to freak out about it.
Yeah, they do. They really do like to freak out about iodine. It's dangerous. But yet, when they don't realize when they do a surgery, they put iodine all over the place and the body just flushes it out.
Well, you said a very important statement when you first started. Not many doctors know about it.
Yeah.
Now,
And there's the unknown factor that's scary for
do
doctors.
you get into the fact of limiting the amount?
Yep,
Okay.
yep, I sure do. And yeah, we get to that.
Okay.
So I'd like to cover both sides, the different views on iodine. That conventional medicine, they've been taught when they went to school that you don't go over 150 micrograms. And so that's what, a little bit more for the pregnancy, like they up it by I think it's 50 micrograms, because they know it's important for the health of the baby, the intelligence of the baby when it's in the womb. And these are just their guidelines. But then the functional doctors who have done the research, and I mean, actually, these are functional doctors as well as they did research, like Dr. Brownstein, who did a lot of this in his own practice, who was actually part of the research. He would go every month to California to work in all the numbers and all the, like what he was running up there and bringing it all together and doing that research. And so this is what they found out. They had much different numbers than what they were finding with conventional medicine, and also with people getting better. And this is really interesting right here. It says, these approaches are not part of the mainstream medical recommendations and remain debated. High iodine intake can cause harm in some individuals, especially those with underlying thyroid diseases. And so this is what they say about that. And there is a teeny bit of truth to that, which we're going to go into it. Who should be careful taking iodine? And so we're going to look at that. So right here, high dose iodine is not part of the mainstream. Why is that? Who's telling us that? Where is there evidence for that? And so we're going to look there's 3 organizations that are saying don't go above 150. 3. So let's look at, do they have any evidence? What's the bottom line? So right here, the American Thyroid Association, they say you should not go over 500 micrograms. Okay, that's set at 150 unless prescribed for a medical reason, and they say it could trigger a thyroid dysfunction. And there's actually some truth to that, but usually you have to take way more than that. And so a little bit of evidence, we need to look at that. Okay, so we're going to flesh out the claim to what's really going on, you know. And that's like saying if you eat food, you could get sick. Well, yeah, anybody, eventually you could eat food, you might get sick, but you need to eat food to survive. Right. Well, if you eat too much food at one time, if you drink too much water, you could get sick. Right. If you're not used to certain things and you eat like a lot of them, you could get sick. We need to flesh these things out. Okay, so National Academy of Medicine, and basically they said that they're just going along with everything else. There's insufficient evidence to say that, you know, they don't have any evidence to recommend higher levels. So in other words, there's no research that they know about, that I've looked at. And so in the last one, the WHO just says it basically because everybody else is saying it. It's just saying everybody says don't take high iodine doses, that's what we're going to recommend. So basically, we're not really getting any evidence, and I have right here the bottom line, high dose milligram iodine recommendations are not supported by science or by any study. And that is really super important.
Well, no, you can
there's a little bit of a go back at the top. Says there are no scientific studies that support iodine, and the reason why is they haven't done a study. Right. You know, it's not that they're saying that they can't prove it. They haven't even tried. Okay, and there's a reason why. The pharmaceutical industry can't make iodine. Right. It's available in the world. You know, so it's not something they can patent. So that's my personal opinion. Right.
Mm-hmm. So
I'll probably have to cut that part of this out.
Didn't you say that when you get an overabundance of iodine, your body flushes it out, right?
Yeah, that's how they do. That's how they figure out how much iodine they have, and they'll give them like 50 milligrams, not micrograms. They'll give them 50 milligrams, and if they only pee out like 20%. And that means they absorbed 80% of it. Right. And so they're like, okay, that person's low, because they know like people who have sufficient amount of iodine should pee out, you know, way more of it. Most of that should get, you know, should be filtered out by the kidneys. And iodine also, when it filters through your body, it's antibacterial, antifungal, so it also does other things besides, you know, just regulating your thyroid. Okay, so they'll say, this is one of the things they'll say, because they don't want to go to high iodine. So what is this thyroid? The American Thyroid Association, they say, oh, we don't want to go above 500 because it could cause problems for some people. So here's what they're talking about. So let's look at that. They say it could cause Hashimoto's. Usually these people already have Hashimoto's. Well, let's look at this. And first of all, there's a negative correlation. This belief, they've just repeated it. They have not looked into it. So the first one we're going to look at is a negative correlation. Then we'll look at this one. between iodine and Hashimoto's. So Hashimoto's is when the body attacks the thyroid. So you usually have hypothyroidism, and then eventually you'll attack your own body. You'll have Hashimoto's. You'll have the antibodies for a blood test. And so what they see is this is a negative correlation, because as the iodine levels dropped, the Hashimoto's and Graves' disease, the autoimmune diseases, has gone up. So how could they say that iodine is causing Hashimoto's or iodine is causing Graves'? It's actually, when you look at the numbers, it's the opposite. So that's the first thing I want you to see. Okay, it gets better. There's even more negative correlation. To study, first we have to learn what is a goitrogen, because for them to do research and study Hashimoto's and goiters, they have to make a rat or an animal have Hashimoto's and goiter, have them have that autoimmune disease. And guess there's only one way they know to make an animal have that disease, is they either have to not give them iodine or block the iodine somehow. They have to give them what's called a goitrogen, so it blocks the iodine. And so that's another negative correlation. In other words, to make these diseases, they have to cut off the iodine, so they'll give them a goitrogen. And it could be a pharmaceutical, or it could be some environmental goitrogens. But these are the ones that they would give that are goitrogens that stop the use of iodine or blocking this is another one. But again, you got to take away the iodine, and those are some that are in nature. Like if you have water, like in California, they have a lot of perchlorate in their water, that's blocking their iodine. And so things out in nature, nitrates, and those are some of the things. And so again, when they try to make these diseases, they have to give them goitrogens. They have to remove the iodine or block the body's ability to use iodine. And so that's a negative correlation. So to say that iodine is causing Hashimoto's, it doesn't match up with the data. Okay, so that's negative correlation. The other one is that iodine, they say it causes Hashimoto's because the thyroid stimulating hormone will stimulate, it'll stimulate a rise in thyroid stimulating hormone, and that is, they're saying, and that is going to cause Hashimoto's. So we have to look at this. So let me explain a little bit about how iodine is used by the thyroid. In the pituitary gland, there's a little gland in the brain, and it makes thyroid stimulating hormone. Thyroid stimulating hormone. It's a hormone that the brain sends out, goes to the thyroid and says, all right, we got some iodine. Let's start making some hormones so we can keep living and your metabolic system can keep working. We'll keep everything, keep the engine running. And so what happens is when a person starts to get low on iodine, the brain goes, oh my gosh, I'm hearing from the body, we don't have enough thyroid, we don't have enough T3. That's a certain type, we'll go into that next month. We don't have enough. So actually what happens is the pituitary gland says send out more, it'll send out more thyroid stimulating hormone because it's trying to get the thyroid to make it. But the thyroid can't make it. No matter how high these levels go, it can't make it because the thyroid can't make it because there's no iodine. Eventually what happens is they'll check someone's THS, but eventually the body will just wear out and that number will come back down. So the first indication a person has Hashimoto's is that number rises because that means they're going into hypothyroidism. They don't have enough iodine to keep the system running to make T4 and T3, which will go in next month. So that's why it kicks on. Now what happens is that's originally how it works. That's how like average person gets Hashimoto's. That's the mechanism. But what happens is a person who already has hypothyroidism, who already has Hashimoto's, or even if they're not, whether they're diagnosed or not, if they have hypothyroidism, when they start giving them iodine, that THS level is just kind of, it's given up, it's just running kind of median. All of a sudden, the body says, we've got iodine, crank the system up, we're in business again, start producing the T4. And so it's telling that it's cranking up, the brain's cranking up the thyroid stimulating hormone so the thyroid can get to work and start making those hormones. And so they see it go up, just like in a Hashimoto's, they see it go up. So and it usually does happen, that does rise because the system's starting to work. And then usually after a week or two or a month, it'll drop back down. And so we know the iodine intake, when you intake it, it's absorbed, and the thyroid is usually the first organ that sucks it up because it needs it the most. And then it'll start making T4 to T3 and have normal function. So that's kind of how it works. But when it hasn't had iodine a long time, that the brain just gives up sending out that signal to make to make thyroid, so that TSH number goes down until you get iodine, and that system kind of cranks up again. So initially there is a problem. What the Thyroid Academy is seeing, that's true, that's there, but it's short-lived, and it's only because the system's cranking back up. And so this is kind of an analogy. The TSH is low because the thyroid's closed. Doesn't have the products to make, it doesn't have the input to make a product. And all of a sudden the person starts taking iodine. Oh, well, now we have the materials to make a product. And so TSH goes up because now we can start making T4 and T3. And so for a period of time when that system's cranking up, we see that rise. And that's what scares doctors, because they're only taught a piece of the story, and that's what I'm going to go over next month, the whole story. And I'll present both of them. I'll present the conventional and the functional. So that way everybody can decide what's right for them, but at least they should know what's out there. And so fixing deficiencies, again, seaweed. I'm not going to eat seaweed. I don't like seaweed. I'm not a sushi, that much of a sushi person. Some people are. There's like shrimp is a good one, like Eddie said. Dairy, you get grass-fed milk, eggs that have a natural diet. You can get you can get some iodine.
Well, I like the good category better than I do the highs. Just saying.
Yeah, me too. I'm with you there. So, your cheese, your milk, cottage cheese, and so forth. Okay, some people do like to take Lugol's iodine. You could take any iodine, but Lugol's, let me have a little look at it. It was developed in 1829, and Lugol's has two forms of iodine. It has potassium iodide, and it has iodine as well. It has two forms of iodine, and one is reduced, and one is like how you have a reduction in a chemical equation, and you have the opposite, a reduction. It's yeah, and so there are different forms of that, because the body, depending on which tissue you have, it requires a different form. So if you're taking, let me just go back to this one. If you're taking iodine, the breast like it, a lot of the lymphatic system like it, but your thyroid doesn't use iodine. It uses iodide. So you'd have to wait for the body to change it over, and you just could have less of it. So that's why a lot of people like the Lugol solution, because it feeds all the different lymphatic tissues and parts of the body versus incomplete. So we have different forms of iodine, and Lugol's will address all those different tissues. Remember that first graph we saw of the human body and all the places that use iodine? It'll fill all those requirements for that. Nastic iodine is incomplete because it's just iodine. It doesn't have iodine. Sea kelp has the whole body, iodized salt. Oh, it's just the thyroid. Okay, so they do have, I have to check on that. Yeah, iodine in it.
So the potassium iodate would be better for you with the solution there?
Yeah, the Lugol solution.
Right.
Well, yeah, primarily because it's got iodine and iodide in it.
Right.
It's got two different forms, and so it hits the different tissues. Whereas iodized salt only goes for the
Right.
thyroid. Because that's all they were worried about was getting rid of goiters. when they
Right.
did it, so.
Yeah, that was their only focus, was goiters. Just
But
enough to stop goiters,
if
not
you eat
other things.
things, they're gonna have both.
Right.
Like, seafood will have both. It'll be like the lugalls and stuff, so.
Yeah. And if a person wants to go on the long road to get their numbers up, their iodine up, just eat a 375 footprint.
Yeah.
It can happen. It's just going to take a little bit longer because it's a little bit everywhere. And so you don't have to take a supplement if you don't want to. But you do have to be careful, because what Dr. Brownstein found out with a lot of his, when he looks into research on iodine, is that there are a lot of, especially if you buy iodine on Amazon, there's a lot of counterfeits out there. And because there's iodide. The iodine, sometimes to cut corners, they'll put in a B12 to give it that brown color. And so, again, the profit, the almighty dollar. And so there are some important cofactors. Usually if people are low in iodine, they're probably not eating the best diet, so they may be low in other things. And so they are like Dr. Tennant, Dr. Wesley. There are places you can buy really good sources of iodine. Like Dr. Tennant, he has just the Lugol's iodine, and then he has some that have the cofactors that are needed for the body to use iodine, like zinc, selenium, vitamin C, thiamine, and folic acid. Now, what's interesting is this is a word of caution, and that is some people take too many supplements, and they take too many supplements too long. Taking iodine, that's not going to hurt you. To take that probably for too long, your body's just going to flush it out. Taking the supplements will. And if you don't know what you're doing, like even vitamin D, like, vitamin D is good. We know it's good. We've seen the research. But what happens is, this is something, when they go over 2 years of taking vitamin D, well, they'll get these other problems within the body. And I like to think about it like, you have the analogy if you're trying to start the engine on your lawnmower, and if you put the choke on, you put too much gas for too long, it's going to flood the system and you could have another problem. Or I think about the Exxon refineries. If you got something's off here, you just give too much, you open this valve a little bit, but if you leave it open too long, are you going to create another pressure problem somewhere out in that big system? Same thing with the human body. It's really complicated. So there's always dangers of taking a supplement that's not natural in nature for too long. And it's going to be selenium and zinc. Yes, it helps a lot of people feel good, but selenium and zinc, they go, oh, I'm going to take that one with selenium and zinc. And they're taking a vitamin with selenium and zinc. You got a problem.
Naturally, if you want to do it naturally, get you some Brazil nuts and eat 3 a day, and you'll get all the selenium you need. They contain the selenium in 3 Brazil nuts to give you what you need in your body.
Oh, wow.
And
That's a lot just for 3.
Yeah, I mean,
you don't need
that much.
You don't need that much.
Yeah, so.
But it just shows you how bad our American diet is. Think about that. What is that? The vitamin C stuff they sell in the store. It's called
Emergency?
Emergency.
Yeah.
And there's another brand.
Airborne.
Airborne, yeah. They tried to get that off. Those are one of the ones they try to get off the market because some people are so low. The vitamin C helps, but the vitamin C and the zinc really helps. And a lot of them have selenium in it. But again, it's just, use that when you're sick. Don't take it all the time for years. Because you may, that's the thing, we don't know enough how complicated the body is. So you may have a problem. Okay, important thing is if you do start taking iodine, if a person's body does have a lot of bromine in it, fluoride in it, chlorine in it, that if you take too much iodine in the beginning, there could be a detox of those elements, okay? So it's important when you take those elements to make sure you're getting enough natural salt, and I'll explain why. Salt does 2 things. One, the sodium acts as a way to get the salt into the iodine. The sodium grabs hold of the iodine and gets it into the cell, over the cell membrane. It transports it in. It needs that sodium. And so it'll give you that energy. So that's the first thing. That's the number one reason why salt, you just put salt on your food, make sure you have a real form of salt to get it in there. The other thing is that when you start taking iodine, you want to start really, really low, because some people have eaten brominated breads for a very long time and they didn't know. You know, you would think you would trust a company who's making something you're going to put in your body, that it could kick off the iodine. The sodium will help hold on and bind to the iodine, the bromide, and bring it, and the chlorine, and it'll actually escort it out the body. So if you don't have, this is a natural binder, you know, salt is, and if you don't have it and you go too high of a dose, you could get, it will actually give you like a little bit of acne, and because it's going to come out of your skin, and you won't feel good that day either.
No, you feel really terrible.
Yeah, because I did it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I did it.
Yeah, you did it to me too.
Yeah, I did it. Yeah.
That's one thing about a partnership, right? One gets it, the other gets it.
That's right.
Well, when he had his radiation on his throat, it damaged his thyroid, so he takes levothyroxine. So he's already getting iodine. So when I gave him iodine, it bumped it up, and
He kicked the bromide out big time, and I felt terrible.
yeah.
man.
And also we're going to go into next month. He's not able to turn it into T3, which is a whole nother issue besides iodine. So yeah, so that's the reason you got to be very careful. Start very, very, if you do take it, if you do decide to take like a Lugol's iodine, take it with salt, go very, very slow. Like for instance, with their research, now they haven't really done any research with high doses and getting the bromides out, but it seems to take like 3 to 6 months if you do it with a doctor, and if you just do it with salt, it takes like 10 years. So there is a difference, but still, if you take iodine, just start low so you don't have to, you know, just go low, just go slow. But you want to use natural sea salt with a little bit of, it has a little bit of a lot of other trace minerals with it. And
we use, Tricia, that's what you got, is sea salt, and you can tell the difference when you use it.
it's got a great, a lot of them have colors because of the different minerals, and they're much, like salt is an electrolyte, sugar is an electrolyte, but salt is a much better electrolyte than purified salt, just NaCl, and so it actually helps things to give it that activation energy to pull it across the cell membranes. So a lot of people who they're dehydrated and they go, I drink water all the time. And so if they would, and so like, you know, they can't pass their kidney stones or this or that. I'm like, just take a little chunk when you drink your water in the morning, just take a little chunk of natural sea salt. And all of a sudden their body, because what's happening is they're drinking the water because they don't have a true electrolyte. The water is staying in between the cells. It's not going into the cells. And their doctors are like, you're dehydrated. It's like, I'm drinking all the water, going to the bathroom all the time. It's not getting into the cell where it needs to get. So we need to go back to a real form of salt with all the other electrolytes.
That gray that you see, that's fish scrap. But it comes from the sea. Yeah, that's artificial.
Right.
I'm just telling you, that's what makes sea
No,
salt
it's
so good.
not. I
Well,
disagree
Tricia,
because
you got-
I've studied where our salt layers come from.
Yeah, Tricia, you
Very
got something
little
about garlic.
marine debris in it.
Was that,
Well, that's just garlic salt.
okay.
Yeah, that sounds tasty.
It's just got garlic mixed in with the salt.
Yeah.
So.
We get smoked salt.
Yeah, which is about liquefied smoke,
Right.
you know. So,
It tastes really good. And so if the body gets what it needs, and God's provided that, God made the body to heal itself. And so what they see, and I'll just give you an idea, what and what I'm going to talk about next month is about the thyroid. What they see with the thyroid and the lymphatic system and like breast fibroids and nodules and prostate, and also the diseases, that when they put people on just iodine, like Lugol's iodine, a third of the people who are on levothyroxine or a form of T4 or T3, a third of them can get off their medicine, just giving them iodine. And then there's another third that can lower their amount, and then there's another third that it doesn't seem to make any difference at all. So it's more complex. It's not just iodine, but it is one of those big factors that people are fatigued and they're cold all the time and they don't know why. And so, not that it's always caused by that. It could be other nutritional deficiencies at the same time, but that's a big part of it. So that's it.
Good
And-
job.
Thank you.